My question is, what's your advice to a tech who's comfortable working on screws and desperately wants to get into centrifugals? And I would say this is a fairly common place to be for many people because in your progression in your career, most of us end up starting on air cooled scrolls. And as you get comfortable with that and you get used to working on them, that eventually scales into an air cooled screw. And then you get caught up in this whole air cooled realm. And then sometimes you may start running into water cooled screws or maybe even water cooled scrolls. They do exist out there. And then you get caught in this whole scroll and screw cycle. And because centrifugals are they are another level of what we work on. And most people really struggle to understand how about this, the cost of something going wrong because you did not do something correctly is very high and very easy in a lot of situations. It's not that hard for you to make a mistake. You've experienced how difficult quality chiller training is to get. I've spent over a decade working as a chiller tech on everything from air-cooled scrolls to large-scale centrifugals in manufacturing facilities. I'm tired of seeing how hard it is to get quality training and support. So I built the resource that I always wanted. I'm offering the help you're looking for, and we can get started today for free. ChillerAcademy.com. That was a genuine naive choice that leads to a $100,000 overhaul. Really not that hard to do. For example, leaving a valve closed on the adductor assembly and allowing the evaporator to start stacking on the oil migration or the oil level stacking in the evaporator, that causing low heat exchange issues, which eventually could lead to liquid refrigerant droplets getting pulled into the evap or into the compressor, which will shred it, or you change a set point incorrectly. I could go down a list here, right? There's lots of things you could do wrong because you just genuinely didn't know any better. And that is why not only the facilities people that are running these plants, but also probably your management is really nervous because that is a lot of liability for somebody who, in their eyes, they have not seen proven their centrifugal ability. And this is what you're going to have to work through overcoming. And so if you want to work on that equipment and in the context of maybe you don't want to change jobs, okay, and this company you're working for does centrifugal work, they need more help on the centrifugal side, but them being willing to allow you to is becoming a hiccup. You've got to show them that you're ready for that type of work. And the best way I could recommend doing that is show them that you know what not to do and start just having some of these discussions. And even if you're going through any of my training I do, whether it be YouTube or in the academy, whatever, I really talk through with them and open a dialogue of, hey, I really want to do this. Here's things I've learned. I've learned that when we're dealing with a surge situation, I can lower my current limit and help unload that machine to get out of a surging state. I understand that I need proper GPM and I'm going to use my DPs. And if I know how to convert feet of head to PSI, and so by that I can take the submittal data if I have access to it and figure out what my flows are. Without getting off on a spiel here, you go through this process and show and explain in your words that you actually understand this stuff on a deep enough level, even if you haven't directly put your hands on to experience it. This is the whole foundations conversation. Really good foundations and just having a basic core repository of what should and shouldn't be, even if you don't have the experience to back it up, will go a long way into helping you just approach a machine and then getting opportunities like this. If you couldn't sit down in a conversation right now and give that breakdown and express to your manager, if you're concerned about my training, this is what I know to do. This is what I have learned so far. And this is how all this works. If you can do that and show that foundation, then the risk you pose walking into that plant and breaking something is significantly reduced. You are far less of a liability to that customer and to that company. And that is, especially in today's job market, one of the big things that's going to keep you out of a lot of opportunities. Now, there are plenty of bad companies. There's plenty of companies that pick and choose. Hey, even if we've got more work than we can handle, only these guys are going to do it. You're going to go work on this over there, right? That kind of stuff happens. And I've been in the role of the manager. It's very difficult and it's very tricky who you can send, what, where, how, why. That is not a simple process for them. You can help make it a simpler process. Now, and all this is in the context that your company even has centrifugals to work on or is willing to work on them. If you are at a company that isn't or doesn't do that type of work, you'll have to find one that does. Now, I highly recommend, if you want to put yourself in a much better position, before you try to go find a company that does, have a strong enough foundation to where you can have that conversation in the interview. Hey, I want to do centrifugal work. I've had limited opportunities getting into centrifugal work. Be upfront with that. Don't hide these things, but then express the education you've gone through to show why you deserve an opportunity to do centrifugal work and that you know enough to know how to not break it. That is the core thing. It's got less to do with what you can do, in my opinion, and a lot more to do with, do you know how to not break it? And can you be in there with the customer and properly speak with them and to them and move, like, you understand the fundamentals of the machine enough to actually accomplish something without having to break it first to know better, right? That is, in my assessment, one of the best ways you can either advance your position, or if you're going to move to a different company, like, have that when you go to make that move. And this is in the context of, like, you understand, you can show your screw chiller background and all the stuff. I think it's a bigger issue with just the mentality and the mindset of the people who are making the decisions on who gets to work on what. In their mind, especially if there's somebody who doesn't have proper experience, but they know that centrifugal, big, scary, right? Big, expensive. Like, that only makes your job a little bit harder, because now you're trying to convince somebody who doesn't know, and their whole job is to just not create a liability. Like, liability and loss aversion. Loss aversion has so much to do with this process. In my experience, changing companies is actually one of the easiest ways to advance in the industry currently. Now, that's sad to say. I really don't want to promote having to company jump to make moves and advance yourself. I really don't like that. I'd really rather we do a better job as managers. And I'm guilty of this, okay? I have to convict myself in what I'm saying. I've been in that position, and it is what it is. But in the end, and the decisions we have to make, many times that is the easiest choice. If that's what we're seeking, is the easiest option. That would be my approach to, I want to get in centrifugals. I'm really good at chillers in general, because 80% of what you need to understand, you learned with screws and scrolls. Like, a lot of what you need to know, you learn there. Then you just plug in the centrifugal compressor aspect, and especially surge. Okay. Plug in the surge and the centrifugal aspect of the equation, and you could argue low pressure if you have accounts like that. So you just stack that extra 20%, if you will. I'm just throwing numbers out there on top of that 80 you've already got as field experience. And in my opinion, you can make a really compelling argument if you've put the work in to build the foundation. If you haven't, then I would say start there. That would be, if they're not already just giving you an opportunity, then without showing something makes you stand above the crowd, and as to why you should get an opportunity, it's going to be a lot harder. In some cases, they'll just be willing to hand it to you. But if they're not, you've got to show something more to convince them. And many times that will mean your actual education, yourself, and why you should be the guy. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.